Good morning, everyone. I'm Kimberly Chalia with PHCA. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Reducing Slips, Trips, and Falls, presented by Lisa Bellis. A few quick updates to share before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the PHCA website. The webinar has been approved for 1 continuing education credit for all attendees. For those who provided a NAB number, credits will be uploaded shortly, and we'll also share certificates with those in attendance. As we begin today, all attendees will be in listen-only mode. Please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A icon on your screen, and we'll make sure to answer as many of those questions as possible at the end of today's presentation. Now I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Thanks so much. Hey everyone, are you guys ready to have some fun? So today we are going to talk about how to defy gravity and to stay upright. And you thought you were attending a slip, trip, and fall webinar. So we have so much more than that for you today on today's webinar. And again, if Kim could just keep her eyes on the Q&A, if there's any questions that come in, please feel free to interrupt me, Kim, and we'll get those questions answered. At the end of the webinar, I will also put up my email in case you'd like to email me your questions. My name is Lisa Bellis, and I head up the Risk Management and Loss Control Department here at Brown & Brown. And I really would like to thank the fine folks at the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association for inviting me to be here with you all today. Now, our learning objectives today are really focused around slips and falls affecting general industry, so not construction. You're going to learn to recognize the different types of falls and identify where they can occur, how to prevent them from happening. And we're going to focus on housekeeping issues, stair hazards, ladder safety. We'll also be discussing appropriate footwear, maintaining 3 points of contact, getting in and out of your vehicles. And at the end, we're going to review responsibilities for both employers and employees in order to maintain that safer work environment. But we're going to start with a quick 1-minute video. I'm going to go ahead and play it. There's no sound on it, but there's definitely a little talk through it. You're going to see words come up on the screen, but I think it's a powerful video. So let's just take a moment and I'll get that video started for you. So I think that's a powerful video to start with because they are preventable. Slip, trips, and falls are preventable. I've been in that exact same situation, setting up for a presentation, plugging in cords. It just happens so quickly. So let's take a look at some interesting facts. So 65% of slips and falls occur on the same level, not up and down steps. This could be slippery conditions, maybe caused by spills or dust, or even trips over objects and cords like we just saw. And more than 60% of elevated falls are only from a height of less than 10 feet. And that includes falls from step ladders or even improvised ladders. I know you know what I'm talking about when we stand on our chairs. Now, did you know that falls are the most common cause of traumatic brain injuries? Slip and fall accidents on average can cause about 11 days away from work. And if you know anything about the effect of claims on your workers' compensation premium, you're going to know that lost time claims will have a significant impact on your premium. Now, the average cost for a slip and fall injury is about $30,000, and there are over 19,000 fatalities that occur every single year due to unintentional falls. But here's the deal, as I mentioned, these injuries are totally preventable. So let's talk about what OSHA has to say. OSHA does regulate the safety of our walking surfaces, and it's regulated under standard 1910.22. So this is designed to protect general industry employees and employers. So this is not construction, this is just general industry. And the rule covers all walking working surfaces. So all horizontal and vertical surfaces. So we've got floors, our stairs, roofs, ladders, any ramps if we have scaffolds, any elevated walkways, and any use of fall protection systems. Now our focus, as I mentioned here today, is going to be for general industry. So we're really not getting into fall protection systems that would affect the construction industry for today. Now, slips, trips, and falls can be really, really costly. And let's take a look at the cost of these types of accidents. So for employees, slips, trips, and falls cause physical injury. And sometimes that injury is temporary, and sometimes it can be a permanent lifelong injury. And they can be very painful. Often they involve our soft tissue injuries to the neck, our shoulder, sometimes our back, or injuries to our wrist, our arm, our knee, or our ankle. And the unfortunate reality is that they reduce our ability to have a good quality of life. So they result in absenteeism, that can lead to depression. Many times opioids are prescribed to manage the pain, and that can lead or even add to the growing problem of addiction. And in the worst cases, these accidents lead to death. Now, for employers, they lose their employees. They have lost work days, lost productivity. They're going to experience increases in their workers' comp insurance premiums as a result. So before we get into prevention methods, let's take a look and examine each type of individual slip, trip, and fall. So for prevention purposes, we really need to know the difference between slips, trips, and falls. So slips, this is the falling backwards. So your body is actually, the momentum is backwards due to the loss of traction on the floor. It could be due to maybe you have a wet floor, could be a greasy floor in a break room or a kitchen, could be snow or ice or other weather conditions, the wet leaves. Now, trips are falling forward, so the opposite way. And we fall forward because our foot or our leg has been slowed by an obstacle, while the upper part of our body just continues to move forward with that momentum. And this is usually caused by things like cords, wrinkled carpets, uneven walking surfaces. Now, falls from the same level, they can also be falls from heights. It's typically a loss of balance. It could come from not using an appropriate ladder. Possibly we don't have hand railings on our stairways. Now there's a difference in the potential frequency, that's the number of accidents, and the severity, that's the cost of the slips, trips, and falls. And although this isn't always the case, falls from an elevation that we see on our screen right now, such as going down the steps and falling, they're not going to occur quite as often. So we refer to these as low frequency and often high severity, meaning the injuries, when they do happen, they're pretty severe. Now, falls on the same level usually happen more often, so we call those high frequency losses, but they're usually low severity, meaning they happen a lot, but they're usually not as severe. That's not always the case. There can be some severe losses from same level. So now, how do these types of accidents occur? Well, slips, trips, and falls occur through lack of friction, our momentum, and gravity. So the first is friction, and this is that resistance between two objects. So in this case, it would be our shoes and the floor or the walking surface. So we want more friction between the soles of our shoes and the floor because that means we have better traction. Now, a low coefficient of friction means that there is less friction, and that means less resistance, and that means you're probably going to fall. Now, momentum involves speed, so how fast we're moving. And also it involves size. How big are we? So, you know, the old saying goes, the bigger you are, the faster you're moving, the harder you fall, the greater chance of losing our balance. Gravity, this is the force that pulls objects towards the earth. This kind of sounds like a science lesson, but when we fall, gravity is that force that pulls us to the ground. Now, our center of gravity, this is our balance point. This is what keeps us upright. It keeps us standing straight up with forward movement. But every time we walk, we transfer our weight from one side of our body to the other side. And every time we take a step, there's just a brief second when we're off balance, and that's when we're most vulnerable to a fall. Now, an unexpected change in the floor surface during this brief period could be something as simple as 1/4 of an inch. This can cause us to lose our balance. So let's take a look at some of the locations, both inside of our buildings and outside and around our buildings where these accidents typically occur. So outdoors, they commonly occur in our parking lots and sidewalks. These often have dips and holes. They happen on ramps, entrances, stairs, and loading docks while getting into or out of vehicles, especially when we're seeing snow and ice, which is upcoming in our state, and on elevated work areas, any type of equipment, and in unprotected openings or edges. Now, inside, tile floors typically cause slips and falls on stairs and in kitchens and bathrooms because those are usually have wetter areas, and other areas where liquid spills would occur more frequently. Now, they also occur near entrances where we track in all that good rain and snow and wet leaves, and on elevated working areas, on escalators, while using ladder substitutes like buckets or chairs, and in cluttered areas. So basically, slips and falls, they can really happen anywhere. But what do they have in common? They are completely preventable. And this is something that you have to buy into. And I know when I go out and I talk to organizations, a lot of employers just accept the fact, they're like, you know, slips and falls, they happen. It's just the cost of doing business. That is not true. They can be prevented. And we're going to take a moment and talk about how. So following the standard risk management approach, we want to identify the hazard so that we can apply corrective actions. But what if an accident still happens? So then what we want to do is we want to conduct an accident investigation so that we can determine the root cause and then fix what happened, fix what was wrong. After we fix it, we need to go back, we need to check to make sure that what we corrected or what we did is really going to work, and then it's going to prevent future slips, trips, and falls. So let's discuss each step further. So again, the first step is to identify those hazardous conditions leading to the slips, trips, and falls. So let's break this down into falls from same level, and then we'll talk a little bit about falls from heights. So from the same level, we've got the slippery surfaces. They're caused by oil, water, or liquids. It could be ice or snow. Mats or rugs, you think that they're protecting us, they're absorbing the water, but a lot of times they do more harm than good, especially if the edges are curled. We have potholes and cracks, cords, open drawers, pallets, dust, poor lighting, improper footwear, uneven sidewalks, and poor housekeeping is usually the #1 cause. Now, from elevations, so this includes things like missing handrails, maybe the handrail is broken, it's often caused by getting into and out of vehicles, or, and I know no one's ever done this, using substitutes for ladders like buckets and office chairs, broken ladders, improper setup of ladders, and sometimes even stair design. Now, there is a way that you can actually test a floor surface to see how slippery it is. So they can be measured, the slipperiness can be measured using a slip meter. And there are photos of these slip meters up on your screen on the right-hand side. Now, the upper photo, this is an English meter, and the lower photo is a sled type meter. Typically, the English meters are a little bit more accurate, they're a little bit better. And what this does is it measures that coefficient of friction of the floor surface under dry conditions and wet conditions. And the information that we derive from this test helps us to determine whether the floor surface treatment contributes to the slips or if the floor is going to provide adequate traction. And often you can request from your insurance carrier's loss control department to come out and perform these tests for you at no cost. Now, step 2 is to conduct an investigation. And this is something we should really be doing at the safety committee level. So why do we investigate slips, trips, and falls? Well, we want to find out the root cause. What really happened? Only after you know the root cause are you able to go back and to apply appropriate corrective actions. So when I think about accident investigation, I compare it to that toddler in the backseat of your car, you know, the one that asks too many questions, but the toddler's got it right. So you really want to ask what happened? Where did it happen? When did it happen? What were the conditions? Why did it happen? How did it happen? That is all going to lead you to get to that root cause. Now, your investigation could include inspecting the location, actually going out and inspecting where the accident happened, taking photos, It could be reviewing the tasks involved in the job that led up to the accident. If equipment was being used, you want to determine whether the equipment contributed to the accident. Take a look at lighting. Was the lighting adequate to allow the employee to see where they're going? Did the employee have on appropriate footwear? Hopefully this is outlined in your employee handbook. If they didn't, why not? And who should have held that employee accountable? Were they carrying any objects that might have obstructed their view? Now, maybe they were walking in a restricted area or even off a pedestrian path. Then you want to have the employee review everything that happened and ask them, what could you have done to prevent the injury looking back? So asking these questions, taking good notes, having conversations with the employee and any witnesses, this is all going to lead you to the root cause, and that will enable you to fix the problem moving forward. So let's take a look at the hierarchy of controls that are going to guide us through the correction process. So now that we know the root cause, we can apply a corrective action. And OSHA has a hierarchy of controls. This is a great place to start. So as employers, it's your duty to assess every hazard and to move through the various levels of the hierarchy of controls. And we start first with elimination. So for example, to eliminate the hazard, let's say you have an employee parking lot that gets icy every single winter. So eliminating this hazard would be not allowing that lot to be used in the winter if you can have them park somewhere else. Then we move to substitution. So an example of substitution might be using a different floor wax, such as a non-slip floor wax. The next level would be applying engineering controls. And this is going to include physical controls, could be applying an epoxy coating on the floor. It could be installing adequate drainage. It could be providing better lighting, more adequate lighting. Once you've applied all possible engineering controls, we examine the administrative controls. And this includes things like accountability. You have to hold people accountable, especially if they're not following your policies. It also includes implementing policies and procedures. So you should have a slip, trip, or fall written policy and procedure. And also it includes employee training. Now, after you've exhausted all possible controls, if the slip, trip, fall hazard still remains, this is when we utilize personal protective equipment. Again, this would include things like fall protection, which really is going to affect more the construction industry, certainly not your industry. So let's talk about some prevention methods. So, several of these will be discussed in more detail in a few slides, but correcting the problem might lead to evaluating our housekeeping practices. Even having the safety committee or other designated employees conducting a walkthrough just to make sure that everything's okay. It may call for instituting a policy for inspecting ladders before using them, or possibly having your IT department go around the office and organize all those dangly wires and cords under your desks. Maybe it's training supervisors and managers to hold employees accountable for wearing appropriate and required footwear. So we don't want open-toed if you're in a situation or in an environment that could harm them. The fix could really range from something more in-depth, such as replacing an entire floor. It could be applying the non-slip epoxy coating we were talking about, but it could be something as simple as purchasing and placing water-absorbent mats at entrances. And speaking of mats, many organizations just pick out any old floor mat, they plop it in front of the entrance, and they're like, we're good to go. But let's take a look at a better way. So entrance mats, as a rule of thumb, footprints, or what we call water prints, should not be seen on the floor beyond the last mat. Typically, mats that are too small to be effective are purchased. We talked about that, these tiny little mats at the entranceways. There is, and I was kind of shocked, but there is a Carpet and Rug Institute. It's CRI. And this institute generally defines an entrance area as the 90 square foot area at the building exterior entrances. And that's where most of our tracked-in soil is deposited. So make sure that you are definitely selecting an appropriate sized mat to absorb the liquid. Now, good housekeeping means keeping floors clean and dry. And if you work in an area that's prone to water, you want to look at whether you can install any type of drainage or even elevate that elevate the work area by a platform. You do want to maintain clear aisles, clear exits, And this is increasingly important during an emergency, such as a fire. Now, if you mop up a spill, you want to make it part of your company policy to place a wet floor sign until the surface is dried. Now, you went around a corner and you run right into another person heading in the opposite direction. So in hallways, convex mirrors, they really can help you see people approaching. As far as the wires, you want to secure wires and cords up off of walking, working surfaces. We had a large claim involving an administrative staff. They got up from their desk, their foot was entangled in the cords, they had no idea, but they did when they got up. The employee fell against the wall behind the desk. This person broke their shoulder and required shoulder surgery. So a simple fix would have been applying a zip tie to gather up those cords and hang them from command strips under the desk, and that might have been like a $5 fix. This loss was $75,000 and was in the mod calculation for the next 3 years. Now, let's take a look at at a pedestrian walkway. So if any of you have workshops, day workshops, or even maintenance departments, outlining pathways for pedestrians really keeps them in a safe area that's going to be, it's supposed to be kept clear of debris, safe to walk in. So if you do have this area, all of your employees should be instructed to adhere to all indicated pedestrian pathways, and that'll help them avoid injuries. So remember, regardless of the hazard, if you see something that could lead to a slip, trip, or fall and you can't immediately fix it, you want to make sure that you at least alert others and keep others out of the area until the problem can be corrected. Now, spill hazards are common, and it's really easy to take on the mindset, you know what, it's not my spill, I didn't do it, wasn't my coffee, not my problem, and you walk away. But it is your problem, and it should be everyone's problem in your organization. So every employee should maintain awareness of their surroundings and pay particular attention to areas that could be more prone to spills. Those areas might include your kitchens, your break rooms, bathrooms, any areas where there's wet processes being used. And you want to keep cleanup supplies nearby these areas. So that would include the wet floor warning signs, any types of mops or towels. Now, if you're applying a floor treatment or a cleaner, you want to be sure to read and follow the instructions before application. And every employee should be trained to clean up spills immediately. Now, another area responsible for slips, trips, and falls are stairs. So let's take a look at stairs. So according to the National Safety Council, there are over 1 million injuries every year just due to stairway falls. And they're the second leading cause of accidental injury, only to motor vehicle accidents. Every year, there are 12,000 stairway deaths. But before we talk about stair safety, I really want you to know the anatomy of a stairway. So the first part of the stairway is the tread. You can see that up on your screen. This is the flat part of the stair that our foot steps on. Next is going to be the riser, and this is the height of each stair. And then next is the width of the stair. And last will be the depth of the landing. So why is it important to know those terms? It's because stairs should have adequate tread depth. If you've been in a really old building, and I've walked through a lot of really old buildings, you might have noticed that the tread on the stairways isn't adequate. Like, you just can't get a good footing on it. It doesn't accommodate solid footing. So according to OSHA, the minimum tread depth is 9.5 inches. So stairs should also have tread and riser uniformity. So the maximum riser height, or how high you have to lift your foot to get you to that next step, is also 9.5 inches. And tread and riser uniformity is really important, because as you begin to climb, ascend, or descend stairs, you sort of develop a natural gait or a pattern. And the first few steps that you take are going to set that pattern. So, if you're all of a sudden you were lifting your foot 9.5 inches, and the next step, you have to bring your foot up 10 inches in order to reach that step, it can really throw you off. So uniformity in risers and tread allow people to go up or down without having to really think about what they're doing. And when you change that pattern, this is what causes people to lose their balance. Now, the minimum width of the tread should be 22 inches. So the stairs should be 22 inches wide. And you may also refer to the Uniform Building Code. Now, slip-resistant treads do exactly what they say. They're going to prevent you from slipping and falling on stairs. Sometimes these are built right into the step itself. Sometimes we accomplish it through putting some type of anti-slip coating, possibly tape. Handrails, they're going to serve two purposes. So first, they're going to protect people from falling over the edge of a platform or possibly a landing or even the stairs themselves. And they're going to help people maintain their balance while going up and down stairs. So you should encourage employees to hold on to the handrails. Now, OSHA requires that stairs that have 4 or more risers or rise more than 30 inches, that they must be equipped with at least 1 handrail and 1 stair rail system along each unprotected side. Now, as far as the stair landing, so you get to the top of the stairs and you're on the landing, it has to be at least the width of the stair and at least 30 inches in depth. So if a door is going to open directly onto that stairway platform, the swing of that door should not reduce the platform's usable depth. And I've also been on inspections where if someone opened the door and someone was coming up the stairs, that person would have been knocked down the stairs. And also do not forget adequate lighting. It's so important that you see where you're going. And oftentimes we forget to light up stairways leading to lower level floors like our basements. So anyone care to attempt the set of stairs on the right? If your stairs look like the set on the left, you're doing okay. But if your stairs have some sort of confusing carpet pattern, like the one pictured on the right, you may want to rethink about this, think about having them replaced. I don't know that I would want to attempt to go down those steps. Our next topic is going to be ladder safety. So to avoid falls from ladders, you should always inspect the ladders, make sure that they're not cracked, they're not broken, there's no defective parts before you use them. And if you find that the ladder has any defects, it should be tagged out of service until the time that it's repaired, or discard it and replace it. Now, there are quite a few types of ladders. Since this isn't a ladder course, we're just going to focus on step ladders, some platform ladders, some extension ladders, and leaning step ladders. So first you want to do is you want to select the appropriate ladder and one that complies with OSHA standards. So you don't want to use a self-supporting ladder such as a step ladder as a single ladder. And instead find an OSHA improved leaning ladder. So we're going to talk more about each of these types of ladders on the next slide. And this is a good refresher. Even if you're in an office setting, you might have maintenance personnel who uses ladders. Proper setup means that you want to place the feet on a firm level surface. You don't want it on a slippery surface. And then fully opening opening the spreader and the shelf so that the braces actually lock in place. Now you want to place the step ladder on a right angle to your work and then check the stability before you get on, just to ensure the ladder is safe before climbing it. Now the base of the ladder should be placed so it's 1 foot away from the building for every 4 feet of height to where the ladder rests against the building. And this is called the 4-to-1 rule. Now for extension ladders, you want to make sure that the top of the ladder is extended at least 3 feet above the landing, and the dogs or pawls, these are the locks, are set before you climb. Then once you set them, you're ready to climb. Now as you go up and down the ladder, again, we want to maintain a 3-point of contact. So we all have 2 legs, 2 arms. 3 of them should always have contact with the ladder. Always face the ladder, and you want to keep your body inside the rails. Anything that you're using, any type of tools, you want to make sure you're carrying them in a tool belt or raised using a hand line. So let's start with extension ladders. I'll show you a picture of them. Extension ladders allow you to adjust the height, and they're made to lean against a support. They're really great for jobs that are up there, that are really high up there, but it's important to know what height you need to reach before you choose the right ladder. So extension ladders should be 7 to 10 feet longer than the highest support or contact point. Let's take a look at step ladders. Excuse me. So step ladders are a fixed height. Those are freestanding, great for a variety of jobs. And on a step ladder, the highest standing level permitted is actually 2 steps down from the top. So you do not want to be standing on the very top of that ladder. A person's maximum safe reaching height is about 4 feet higher than the height of the ladder. So for instance, an average height person can typically safely reach 8 feet on a 4-foot ladder. And if you need to get closer to your work, you can choose what's called a lean-in. And this is a leaning ladder. This is a step ladder that can be closed and used in a similar fashion as an extension ladder. And it's important to wear proper footwear when using a ladder, and in also many other instances on the job. So let's take a look at footwear and appropriate footwear selection. So I'm not sure how many of you have, or how many of your organizations have a formal footwear policy. You really want to question, are you allowing flip-flops? Are you allowing sandals or open-toed shoes, or even high-heeled shoes when there's more substantial footwear needed? During the accident investigation, ask what type of shoes the employee was wearing. There should be consequences spelled out in this footwear policy for wearing shoes that are not approved. Also, when you're selecting your footwear, be aware if the shoe comes with a big sign on it saying this is OSHA approved for slip resistance. I'm going to tell you right now, there are no OSHA approved shoes. We can, however, make observations to help us determine whether a shoe is going to be slip resistant. So let's take a look at these observations. So you want to examine the outsole pattern. So does the shoe have a high arch? Does the sole pattern allow water that's going to flow through it? Are the treads deep enough? And can you see the sole in the shoe? It has treads at a greater than a 90-degree angle. So you want to go for a shoe with a polyurethane, maybe a microcellular urethane sole. And remember, most workplaces are not the place for open-toed shoes or flip-flops. Now, winter conditions, I know it's really chilly in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania today. It almost feels like snow, but winter conditions are on the way. They're usually always an issue. So there are strap-on footwear that are available as supplements when there's icy and snowy conditions. And I have an example up on your screen. This is from Winter Walking. It has the benefit of being able to be used indoors and in cars. There are a lot of other sources, so you may want to contact Google it and take a look to see what type of slip-on ice cleats that you can purchase out there. Now, bad weather is a culprit to slip, trips, and falls. And again, as we're approaching the winter season, you really want to enforce proper footwear. Avoid carrying items in snow or ice. So if you're going to do that, put them in a backpack and put the backpack over both shoulders. And then you want to make sure that you're doing what's called the penguin shuffle. So let's take a look at another quick video. I want to show you this technique. Oop, and we're going to go back because let me click on the right thing. There we go. Get this video started, and this will outline what the penguin shuffle is and show you how to walk safely on snow or ice. Okay, so that's one of the techniques that we do show our clients, that it's just easier and safer to make sure that you are walking like a penguin. You want to make sure that you're also using handrails and keep a watch for icy spots in parking lots and sidewalks. You should start to stock up on a salt and sand mixture. Keep that available, and that is also going to help with traction, and that salt sand mixture is going to help during melt refreeze conditions. Now, mud, rain, ice, and potholes can create slip and fall hazards. So when entering or exiting a vehicle, we want to use that 3-point of contact. So again, that means your 2 hands, 1 foot, or 2 feet and 1 hand should be on the equipment at all times. So let's take a look. There's various diagrams going up steps. We see the girl having 3 points of contact. Getting into the vehicle, we see that person also has 3 points of contact. The same applies with ladders. The very last picture on your right, there's not 3 points of contact. We have 1 arm and 1 leg hanging off that ladder. Now, the human factor is going to play an important role on how well and how safely we move about, and our physical condition can affect our balance and our ability to perform certain functions safely, things like climbing a ladder. So we can minimize this risk through daily exercise, a diet rich in vitamin D and calcium. If you take prescription or over-the-counter medications, it's really important to know how they might affect your coordination. Avoid carrying too many items that could block your ability to see objects or changes in walking surfaces or steps. And it's better to take several trips. I know I've seen a lot of people try to get everything done in one trip. I'm like that with grocery shopping. I have my arms lined with bags, but it really is better to take several trips than to wind up injured in an accident. Now, if your eye doctor prescribed corrective lenses, you want to wear them so you can see where you're going. And again, follow your company's policies on footwear. Now, if you're an employer, you'll want to outline your policies in the employee handbook or your safety manual, but then you have to hold employees accountable if they fail to follow those procedures. More often than not, the accidents I hear about come down to plain old not paying attention, like this. So see this guy? He is busy on his talkie box and he's not looking up. He just got a text from his coworker about a meeting, meeting up for happy hour. And he saw the signs earlier in the day that we're alerting people to the uncovered manhole, but he was so busy with his phone replying that he wasn't so lucky. So his distracted walking resulted in him looking up from that 10-foot fall onto concrete. This person's got multiple broken bones that are going to require surgery. He's going to be out of work for months. So don't be like that guy. You want to stay free from distractions as you move about your day. So maintaining safe walking working surfaces is going to be everyone's responsibility. And it doesn't matter if you were responsible for the cord on the ground or if you were responsible for the spilled coffee. It doesn't matter that you're not the supervisor of the person currently attempting to put up a happy retirement sign over the coworker's cubicle using a stack of boxes. Say something, do something, raise awareness in your workplace for employees to stay alert. You want to report hazards that could lead to a slip, trip, or fall immediately. So don't be that person who walks past a hazard and they justify it in their own mind by not reporting it or correcting it because, hey, it's not my job. If you have the ability to wipe up a spill, to sweep up, to move a cord, do it. And managers and supervisors out there, it's okay to hold your employees accountable. It's better to reprimand someone for using a ladder improperly than seeing them loaded up on a stretcher to be taken away to the hospital. Another suggestion is to put up safety posters to remind employees of slip, trip, fall awareness and prevention. You want to make sure you're training your staff regularly and getting your safety committees working on keeping walking working surfaces safe. And the next few slides are mostly photos that I have taken during inspections. So these photos, they don't have anyone's name attached. So if you see a picture of your work area, no one knows. These highlight some dangerous conditions though. So let's take a look. So according to OSHA, we learned that steps with 4 or more risers or that rise more than 30 inches in height must have at least one handrail. So this step, and they not only do not have a handrail, they also appear to be rotted and probably need to be replaced. So this is a very, very small ripple, but even the smallest ripple in a carpet can cause a trip accident. And flip-flops, so they're comfortable, I'm not gonna lie, but they don't belong in the workplace and they should not be worn, especially while driving. Loose cords, I see this a lot during my inspections. They usually cause trip accidents when our feet get hung up or tangled up in those wires. This is the broken or defective ladder that we were talking about. They can cause serious fall injuries, and this is why it's so important to inspect that ladder before you use it. Selecting an appropriate ladder for the job. So this fellow, we talked about the different types of step ladders. So he's using a step ladder improperly. Number one, the base of the ladder should be spread and locked in place and set at a 90-degree angle to his work. This is also common in office areas. So first off, this appears to be an extension cord. And if you need to use this cord for more than a temporary job, you want permanent electrical wiring installed by an electrician. If it's just a cord from an appliance or equipment, take a look around. Can the appliance or equipment be moved so that it can be plugged directly into a wall outlet? And this is going to eliminate the need to stretch the cord over a walking area. Now, these non-slip treads, they were a really good idea but they're about 10 years old and the edges are just beginning to curl up. So you want to either secure them back down again, or you want to remove the tread entirely and just replace them with a new one. We talked about height differential. So this is just a height differential of 1/4 inch. Just like this one, it really can send you sailing if you're not paying attention. So here you could post a sign, you could apply bright tape. I think the best solution probably would be to install some sort of ramp. Again, handrail is really important with 4 or more risers. And again, you know, we have someone, it looks like housekeeping is vacuuming up, but they've walked away and left the vacuum cleaner out, and there's the cord. So you want to make sure that, you know, if you have to leave your job, you want to unplug it, wrap the cord up until you can continue on with it. Possibly even place some caution signs. This is one of the most frequent areas we see slips, trips, or falls. So icy parking lots with lots of holes like the one up on your screen. Many employers will tell me, you know what, it's way too expensive to patch. So my suggestion back is fill it with gravel until it can be repaved. This is an example of a ramp that had non-skid tape applied. Again, tape was applied years ago. It's beginning to wear. So new tape could be placed on it, or you could remove this ramp and even install a newer non-skid ramp in its place. And while this isn't a photo from one of my inspections, I have looked down into the abyss of really poorly lit basement stairs, more than I care to. Some also missing handrails, some with wooden steps in need of repair. So these are all things that can be uncovered by the walkthrough inspections that your safety committee is doing, from your insurance broker or your insurance carrier. So let's summarize what we've discussed, tie it all together. So the first step is conducting an assessment of surfaces that could lead to that slip, trip, or fall. What hazards are present? What have we identified through root cause analysis during our accident investigations? And once you've identified the hazard, fix it. So you're going to apply the best corrective action or a combination of actions. You want to train all of your employees on your slip, trip, fall prevention program, on proper footwear and increasing the awareness, and then hold them accountable. You want to monitor the results of any corrective actions you applied, just to make sure that they're actually working and they're not going to contribute to the hazard. And if there happens to be an accident, as we discussed, make sure you fully investigate it to get to the root cause. Then it's just wash, rinse, and repeat. Controlling working hazards is a continuous loop, and we have to stay on top of it every day because our environment changes every day. So that concludes this particular training, and I'll open it up now for Q&A, which you can do using that Q&A button, or you can send me an email. My email address is shown up on your screen, lisa.bellis@bbrown.com. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lisa. I have the Q&A channel opened up. I'm not seeing any questions at this moment, so I'll give everyone another minute or two if they do have a question that they'd like to submit. And as a reminder, you can always reach out to Lisa or myself after today's session if you're camera shy and would rather ask your question, you know, offline. That's perfectly okay. And today's session, once again, will be shared on the PHCA website in the upcoming weeks. I'm not seeing any questions being proposed in the Q&A channel, which is perfectly fine. And I'll give everyone back 17 minutes on their afternoon. I appreciate your time, Lisa. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome. Stay safe, everyone, and have a wonderful holiday season.
You too. Bye.